While I'm studying this grad dip, I'm employed as a casual educator. I work across multiple sites for a large early childcare provider of long day care throughout the suburbs of Canberra on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. This particular day, I was allocated to the junior toddler room, which I love. The children are around 18 months of age and are little enough to need an after-lunch nap. It was getting on in the afternoon, and the children were gradually waking up. Harvey was the first one awake, and we got ready and went outside looking for something to do. But it was a very hot day, and the yards in these commercially run centres are not that pleasant on hot days. The trees are immature, the grass is synthetic, and there aren't even that many shade sails. Harvey and I walked to the sandpit, but it was in the full sun. There was not a lot to do. But just then, something amazing happened. A huge butterfly sailed over the sandpit. Harvey pointed excitedly. "Oh, yes," I said. "You see the butterfly?" Harvey nodded, jumped up and down, and ran around in a circle. We watched it together and marvelled as it landed on a lime tree, and after a few minutes it flew out of sight beyond the roof. "Butterfly," I said, flapping my hands linked together at the thumbs. Harvey watched my gestures, then he copied my hand movements until he mastered them in the same butterfly gesture. Later that day at pickup, I shared with Harvey's mum that he had seen a big butterfly today. Harvey flapped his hands like a butterfly. We see from this everyday moment that from very early ages, children are using systems of thinking and comprehension to understand the world around them. Even the most mundane settings have rich pedagogical possibilities if we are open to engaging with children. Could we describe Harvey as learning from the experience with a butterfly? Absolutely. But would we describe this event as an opportunity to extend Harvey's literacy? As a pre-verbal child, traditional views of education would dismiss Harvey's reaction as behaviour rather than communication. However, the New London Group, in their seminal article, A Pedagogy of Multiliteracies Designing Social Futures, might claim otherwise. They recognise many ways, multiliteracies, through which children comprehend the world and make meaning. For instance, Harvey's nods, gestures, movement through space, and affirmation of my retelling of the butterfly's visit to his mum all comprise multimodal literacies beyond the traditional print literacy Harvey is not yet able to perform. And that is why multimodality in the early years is so important, because it meets children where they are at, and it's being responsive to the ways young children learn best. The day after working in the junior toddler room, I did some research and found out that the butterfly we had seen at the centre was a checkered swallowtail. I learned that more could be found at the Menanja garden at the National Arboretum, Menanja being the generic Ngunnawal word for butterfly. The Arboretum's website had a lot of information about the garden and how Ngunnawal elder Tyrone Bell had passed on the knowledge from his father Don Bell, a well-known previous Indigenous custodian. But when I arrived at the garden, I was somewhat sad to see the state of it. The trees had all been removed because of rot. There was no vegetation except for weeds, and a lot of the plaques were in poor repair. It saddened me that the website was presenting a false narrative and reminded me a lot of the hot day with no shade at the long day care centre in suburbia. Here I recall the Ngunnawal story of Menanja. So here we are at the Menanja
garden, which is the butterfly garden at the National Arboretum. And this is an oral tradition told by originally Don Bell and retold by his son Tyrone Bell, who is an animal elder. And the garden was commemorated by him as a gift for the Arboretum. Manaja was an Aboriginal girl who was pursued by Gungal. He was trying to make her marry him, but she was saved by being turned into a butterfly. And she was able to stay close to her family and her country by being a butterfly. And so in this region we have many beautiful butterfly species.
So how does this experience in the childhood setting and on country relate to the imperative of multiliteracies in early childhood pedagogy? To paraphrase McRae, the dominance of language often eclipses sensory ways of knowing and embodied knowledge. When we recognise that children bring such complexity into their learning expression, it's obvious that written language alone is too narrow a framework provided to communicate and explore ideas. Hickey, Moody and Wilcox explore the embodiment of childhood and how past events, culture and in particular trauma find expressing in the child's responses to the world around them. I began to wonder if the event of the butterfly would remain with Harvey, latent, and for how long. If I was his regular teacher, I could scaffold his learning, extend it, circle back, reinforce it, tell him about Manaja, the Aboriginal girl. To be an educator capable of working in multimodal ways requires a personal, ongoing commitment to nurturing the creative, playful, embodied and situated self. To that end, I've taken the opportunity during this unit to explore the various elements, design and redesign, experimenting with the meta-languages of linguistic, visual, audio, gestural and spatial meaning. By far the most satisfying for me was visual arts making, working with watercolour and acrylic paints. From childhood, I have enjoyed drawing and painting and find it very relaxing. In this footage, I am painting a checkered swallowtail butterfly, and as I work, I am retelling the events of Harvey, the story of Manaja, and chatting about multimodal pedagogy across various age groups. It is giving me a new perspective as I use the left half of my brain. Binder and Kostopoulos highlight how the use of an ongoing arts-based project around a unified theme can augment learning at home, consolidate identity, and build community for young learners. They state, through multimodal forms of expression, young children find validation and empowerment through a redefining of self, which ultimately transforms the relationships to themselves, others, and the world around them. Kalantzis and Cope discuss the need for an expansive definition of literacy. The traditional regime, dominated by print, text, and language, is not agile enough for technological growth that will face future generations. Multiliteracies that offer cognitive flexibility are needed to equip children for modern life, especially with emerging digital technologies. I experimented using generative AI to create some media with a text prompt. A preschool-age boy stands in a lonely playground watching a black and white butterfly. I was trying to recapture the scene at the Long Daycare Centre. It is amazing to think that AI has barely been in popular use for 18 months. That is Harvey's entire lifetime. In what ways will artificial intelligence develop by the time he is in kindergarten? Now more than ever, multiliteracies and the principles of design are relevant in children's life worlds. Multimodal learning has profound implications and opportunities. It recognises children are so capable of complex, nuanced meaning-making from the earliest of ages. The research calls for a paradigm shift in early childhood education to respond to the diverse ways children communicate and make meaning. The industry needs to get its act together, and so does Canberra. As for me, I'm going to continue to honour young children's embodied personal and cultural experiences and expressions, deeply engage children, supporting their learning as well as my own in multimodal and creative ways, and also look to the skies for more butterflies. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Yarra.